If you work in enterprise security, then I don't have to tell you how important data security is to the work that you do every day. So I want you to stick around. I've got a really interesting guest here in the studio. We're going to talk about data security. We're going to talk about outcomes for CISOs, more so than just sort of, in the past people talking about data security as a thing. Now it's about outcomes. So stay with us. We're going to talk about some things that I suspect are going to help you in your day-to-day work. Hi, I'm Amoroso from TAG. I want to welcome you to our discussion today. I have an iconic CEO here today, my friend Yaki Faitleson, who runs Varonis. He's been here a few times. We talk about data security. He's been doing some amazing things in the platform and for his customers, and I asked that he come by and let's talk about some of the great updates that are going on. Yaki, it's nice to see you. How you doing?
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, always great to have you come here. Normally I ask people, hey, tell us about Varonis, but everybody knows you guys. You guys are the iconic data security company. You have made some changes. You've taken some steps toward a more SaaS type architecture. That is super exciting. Also not easy to do. Yeah. So what was the...
Not easy to do correctly, yeah.
Right. Now, what was the push there? What was the sort of the driver?
So the first push ahead was just the regular benefits of SaaS, ease of use, and this is how customers consume software today. But for us, we started small 5.5 years ago and then really doubled down. It was automated outcomes. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, attacks can come from anywhere and any device, but only going in one direction, and it is the data. If the wrong people have critical data, you have lasting damage. And if bad actors didn't get into your data, then the CISO, by and large, did his job. So the reality for us was, we are the data standard for data security, and we had a high-value self-hosted platform, but it required effort. And we looked at it and we said, you need to unleash robotic value proposition into the problem that has three main pillars, to make sure that only the right people can access the right data, which is the holy grail, understand extremely accurately what is critical, and stop and alert on abnormal behavior reliably. And this is what we have done. We had a North Star head that said 10% of the effort, order of magnitude 10 times more value, and it works extremely well. Just the Varonis robots doing the work for the customers. So it's really exceeding our expectations, and we are just extremely excited the way that it's going on.
This might be very simplistic, but it seems like every enterprise is moving towards SaaS, cloud, and so on. So as you shift your platform, is that in some sense lining you up maybe more in a more unified way with the way customers are doing their work? Is that the idea?
It is, but primarily it's unleashing a lot of automation. So the way that it works is that customers have much more security problem than skilled people to do it. And the data is growing tremendously, and this is where you have risk. Really, data security is your first and last frontier. If you're not protecting your data, you're not doing anything because you have this massive blast radius. And the other thing, if all your other security failed and your data is protected, you are protected. But if you have perfect perimeter security and it failed, and then 90% of the data a user can access is not relevant for him, and you just have a very simple malware that took username and password and exploiting this excessive access control, then all hell breaks loose. So for us, it's yes, let's go to the SaaS the way that customers want to deploy and consume software, but primarily get into these automated outcomes to make sure that, for lack of a better term, that customers just need to pay and we can do everything for them. And also, we and our partners have very good practices for professional services, for remediation, posture management, and tremendous practices of incident response. And our people and our partners' people can be 10, 20 times more productive in the cloud. We see all the data, we can do everything for the customer. It is almost no touch value.
I've known you for several years. You always talked about automation. So is it at this point, Are we really getting to the point where manual just has to be completely eradicated, or is it that the automation is getting smarter? Is it broader? What sort of change? Because you've always been a company focused on automating. It sounds like it's more intense.
The key is to make sure that the automation can go farther and farther. You need two things actually.
So it's broader.
Exactly. You need automation and you need coverage. You need automation everywhere, from configuration to execution of the actual remediation or incident response and the rollback. You know, organizations spend so much on security that they need to put in very little effort and to get these automated outcomes. And the other thing, you know, there is an end and means to an end. And the end is always data, Ed. It's always data. If the data is protected, if we now will dissect the anatomy of every breach, it's all about the data. If no one touched data, you can have denial of service, sometimes problem with the infrastructure, but if the data is protected, the enterprise is protected, the organization is protected. And if they took data, there is just this massive problem. And data is everywhere. So you need automation and you need coverage, and Varonis did both. And when you're doing something like that, it's a lot of effort. You need to have the eye of the tiger on the mission and really to make sure that it's working. And you're talking about massive amount of data, and it's need to interact. We always discuss about this tension between productivity and security. You know, the data is the lifeblood of every organization. You need to make sure that you get in and you have these robots that can integrate with the processes that organizations have and take the automation end to end.
I remember talking to you when ChatGPT was first coming out, and I think you may have said that this is going to create a lot of data. I think you were right.
Yeah.
It seems like you push a button, and now you get all the data you need. Not always good data, but it is what it is. Is that what's going on now? Do companies see that? Are they having this explosion of data because
it's changing
of the
completely the
generative
game.
AI?
It's changing completely the game, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because if you look at all the co-pilots, so
Microsoft.
Microsoft's an instance. I think that you will have many more solutions for end users. Two things will happen. One, they will be able to create very succinct information product, and the way that these tools will work, they will exploit all the access control that you have. And according to Microsoft, this is not me saying, 90% of the access controls are excessive. You don't need to have them. So a user can access so much data that is not relevant for him. Right. So he says, you know, ChatGPT, show me all the critical data. Whatever you are doing, very fast you create these high value information products with excessive access control, completely outside of policy, unlabeled. The other thing that is happening, think about the rates of information growth. Now what happened when you can automate everything? So the AI will create a lot of data, and then what is happening with bad actors? If bad actors took your credential and it's in, they can exploit these products in order to take a lot of critical information super fast. And the other thing, Ed, is, you know, you are world-class security expert. You know how hard it was to build the malware, to build the very sophisticated APTs. Now it's easy. You need very basic knowledge. You go to these AI tools, and in a second, you build a very sophisticated malware, very sophisticated APT. And what happens is that every layman can become very dangerous bad actor. And this is like a perfect storm from hell. So there are tremendous productivity gains. There are tremendous way to get much more for your data, but the risks go exponentially. And the only way that you can solve it is with something that can come in and automate everything for you to make sure that only the right people can access the right data. You know what is critical, and reliably you can alert and stop abnormal behavior.
So I get the broad automation makes sense. That makes sense. What about algorithms? Have you guys had to invent anything new, or do the core algorithms extend properly with this?
It's a very good question. So we did it. We took everything that was good. We built a tremendous architecture. So if you look at every KPI of SaaS, we are, you know, top notch, world class. And the other thing we have done, we build these data structures and algorithms to be able to leverage the amount of metadata that we have to understand threats much better. So we took everything that worked very well in the self-hosted. We build world-class SaaS architecture, and we build data structures that we can utilize the data much better.
remember at one point when I first became aware of Varonis, I wasn't sure if you guys were a point solution or platform. And in the time I've known you, you guys have built out, I think, a world-class platform. Is platform the right word for
Platform
what
is platform is the right word. Essentially,
help people understand kind of the difference between a point solution and a platform, because I'm not sure everybody understands that difference.
Yes. So a platform first, it's a multi-use framework.
Right.
But within it, you have a lot of components that talk to each other in order to provide value. So what happens is that this data repository, and don't forget it, the data on-prem is not going anywhere and still growing relentlessly. So you have this data growing in so many repositories, in SaaS, in IaaS, massively also on-prem, and you have a lot of these use cases. So what is happening with point solutions that many times they can't scale, they're problematic, you don't get to the outcome, it's just busy work. But think about, the Uber attack.
Right.
A hacker is scanning the file shares, taking username and password, then moving to the S3, from there to G Drive. If I remember correctly, GitHub, and we just this morning we had I saw that there were two big breaches. It's always the same story. So you need to be on all the data repositories. If you can only classify the data, it's meaningless. You need to understand what is critical, accurately in a scalable way. Then you need to remediate to make sure that only the right people can access the right data. You need to alert on any abnormal behavior. You need to make sure that bad actors not on any other platform. You need to understand all the data flows from the API, what's going on on-prem. You need to connect all the metadata to places that are farther in the MITRE framework, because our promise to our customers automatically will make sure that you don't have data breaches, and if your perimeter fails, Varonis will save you. And obviously the insider is the biggest risk of all, and we will make sure that you don't have the insider threat. But without the platform, what will happen is that you will have a lot of busy work, your visibility will be very narrowed, and you will invest your team's time in a lot of busy work without getting to results.
Well, what's the role of a platform in tying together premise and cloud? That's the number one question we get. Like, do I do cloud here and premise there? Do I do them together? Do I start here? So how does a platform bring those things together? They're very different
but
situations.
You have collectors. You take the metadata, you put it in the central data repository, and you analyze it. But you need to bring the metadata from everywhere, from your Active Directory on-prem, from your on-prem LDAP, from Azure AD, from Okta. It's all connected. Mm-hmm. You know how it is. Attacks are very sophisticated, going from anywhere. You see the ransomware attack on file shares, going to, a 365, a lot of lateral movement. If you can't understand the digital access, if you will, from the directory service to the machine itself, understand abnormal behavior, have all the clusters, and understand the content, your ability to protect from data breach automatically, it's non-existent.
Interesting. Do enterprises classify their data properly typically, or do you think that that's a weakness?
If they are not doing automatically, it's a massive weakness. Unfortunately, Ed, to lean on the end users to do it is it will never happen.
What would be their obligation? Like if they're ready to do business with you, or is there pre-work? Do they have to come up with some sort of mission or threat-driven understanding of the buckets or something? That probably has to come from them, right?
So it's a very good question. If it's a non-regulation, we are doing everything for them.
Yeah.
Anything that related to secrets, which is username, password, certificates.
Non-regulated meaning entertainment industry.
No, we are doing it for them, but even to something that is unregulated, that can differ from one organization to the other, we are extremely efficient in working with dictionaries, so they will need to do very little heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm. In the regulated industries, do you rely more on
everything? Yeah, we know.
Rely on frameworks?
In the regulated industries, and everything that is secrets, username, passwords, certificates, tokens, we are doing everything for them. It's we have done a lot of work to be able to classify it without any intervention from the customer. We can automate the whole thing.
You said something important a little bit ago. I'm going to bring you back to the Microsoft point about over-permissioning. Tell me more about that, because that seems pretty important, this idea that everybody... Is it over-permissioning? Is that the issue?
Yeah, excessive permissions. The reality is, we call it the blast radius.
Yeah.
The reality, if you're going to any enterprise in the world today, if it has more than 500 users, usually 80-90% of the data that people can access is completely not relevant for them. Now think what is happening with all these chat boxes and collaboration tools, Teams,
Right.
Slack,
Right.
GitHub. People are oversharing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so easy to share a link.
It's convenient.
So yeah, with 360, if you look at data on-prem, a terabyte of data on-prem versus 365, in 365, usually you have 10 times more oversharing because it's so easy for the end users, and this is why it's such a great collaboration tool. But in terms of a security, it's a disaster. And if you don't have a robot that accurately can understand what's going on, and now the access to a need-to-know basis without breaking a business process, you will never be secure.
You've said robot a few times.
Yeah.
Tell me, is that a design primitive in the platform? Do your customers reference robots? It's a very
robotic,
cool concept.
but it's we understood that, you know,
I
we
love
don't know.
that.
Think
a
about
data security robot. I want one.
Yeah, I can sell you one.
That sounds like the right thing.
But the reality is that we know so little about the future. One thing we know that the economy, every enterprise will be completely dependent on data more and more, and that big actors will want it. And you will have this tension between security and productivity. And with massive data growth and platform and all the AI tools, the only way to do it is with complete automation that only a robot can do it. And I promise you that the Varonis robots will not fail.
That sounds very cool. Well, I want one in every color. The cloud service providers, what I've noticed with cybersecurity vendors that get big, like you guys, is that eventually you start to, instead of being a small supplier to cloud service, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, so on, you start to look like a peer to them in cloud. Are you dealing with them in a new sort of light these days?
We have very good partnership. We enhance their platform, and really for the customers, it's 1 + 1 = 5, and it works very well.
We see that, I mean, I come from telecom, there's this shift in sort of infrastructure and that shared responsibility model away from, say, the traditional service providers really to the cloud and SaaS providers. Does that change the data equation because you got things no longer in one place, but they're scattered everywhere? I mean, it's hard to imagine a place where you don't have data.
It doesn't change the equation. What it changes is changing the challenge, because the data is growing. You have so many flows through API, third-party applications. So it's beneficial for the business when it's working. In terms of risk, the risk is going leaps and bounds. And if you will not be able to protect it, eventually it will be very easy to inflict tremendous damage in your organization. And as you know, I can't say it enough times, the only way to do it is automation.
What sort of predictions do you have for the next few years in this area? Do you think, are you optimistic that things will start to get better? Because you mentioned also a couple of breaches today. One breach after another. I always tell my grad students, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. But is that going to change, or are we heading off a cliff here?
I don't think we are heading off a cliff. I think that sometimes it can look very challenging, and I think that sometimes in the security industry, people are doing things on autopilot until they need to understand that they need to fight the battle differently.
Right.
And I really believe if the mission is to protect information and data, this is where you need to be focused. And there are so many tools and so many processes that organizations can digest. And there are also, relatively to the problem, very few security experts. And I think that is on the vendor is to solve the problems where the damage is happening and to do it automatically. I just think that with all the spend on security, organizations just need to pay and the vendor needs to do most of the work. And this is what Varonis is delivering.
That sounds good to me. What have we not covered? There's so many topics here. We could talk for 4 hours. Anything that I've left out of my
No,
list
I
here?
think that we have enough now.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for stopping by. Keep up the good work. Data
Thank you so
security is the backbone of protecting infrastructure, protecting countries, protecting everything. So keep up the good work. We need you guys to be doing
Thank you. We'll
at
do
the
that.
top of your game.
Thank you so much.
Always nice to see you. For everyone else, we'll see you next time.